So you decided this is the year where you get in the best shape of your life. You know it's not gonna be easy, but you also know you have to start somewhere. And here's the very first workout that I would personally do if I had to start all over again. In my opinion, here is the best beginner's upper body workout. Let's get into it. Now keep in mind, there are no one size fit all workouts when it comes to working out in general. What I'm focusing on is increasing your strength, building muscle, and of course trying to develop a more aesthetic physique overall. But let's say your goal is weight loss purely. Generally speaking, once you lose the weight, you kind of want to build muscle, so it's good to prioritize weight training in the first place anyways. And what I'm trying to do is have you build the habit of actually being consistent long term. Above anything else, that's gonna be the most important factor. Ultimately, I want this to be a starting place for you, so I'm gonna keep it relatively simple while still encompassing as many muscle groups in my upper body as possible. So before we even get into that, we have to talk about the different muscles that are gonna be involved. So when it comes to upper body, I like to focus on 6 different muscle groups. Now there are chest, back, notably the lats and the mid to upper back, call it your traps and rhomboids, pretty much just everything above your lats. Then we have the shoulders, notably the front, side, and rear delt. Then we're moving down to arms, including the biceps and triceps. And then lastly, we got abs, but I will touch on abs at the end of the video. Now you might be wondering, is it even possible to be hitting all these muscle groups in one workout, especially in a reasonable amount of time? The short answer is yes, by focusing on compound movements. Compound movements are multi-joint movements that essentially involve multiple muscle groups. Keep in mind that these compound movements will still generally have one muscle group that we're focusing on, but other muscle groups will synergistically help in the movement as well. Second thing you might be wondering is how long will this workout take? All in all, aim to have the entire workout start to finish to be complete in under 60 minutes. And this is possible with 2 factors. Firstly, I'm gonna keep the volume lower in general. The max I'm gonna have you do is 3 sets for 1 exercise. Now you might be wondering, am I able to actually grow if I'm only doing less than 3 sets for a specific muscle group? The answer is yes. You just have to increase the intensity of your workouts. And the second factor is I will also be using antagonistic supersets to make the workout overall more efficient. If you're unfamiliar with antagonistic supersets, they're essentially a way to knock out 2 exercises in 1 paired set. They're called antagonistic supersets because the 2 exercises involved are generally going to be involving opposing muscle groups, so that the muscles involved in the first exercise are completely different than the muscles involved in the second exercise, so you're not just going to be completely fatigued on that second exercise. And overall, this will make more sense once we get into the workout. Now keep in mind, warm-ups are not included in this workout. However, the best way to warm up, in my opinion, is simply taking 2 to 3 warm-up sets of 3 to 5 reps of whatever exercise you're doing and gradually scaling up in weight until you finally get to your working set, which is the set where the weight is actually heavy enough and when you're starting to actually count the working sets. So good luck on this workout. Let's get into it.
All right, jumping into exercise number 1, we have 2 sets of a lat pull down for the lats, of course. Now, before you even begin, make sure that you secure yourself into the actual seat by adjusting that knee support, making sure you don't have to be on your tippy toes or anything when you're doing it. More stability helps you out because it helps you focus better on the muscle rather than trying to stabilize yourself. For your grip, I recommend taking a grip just outside of shoulder width, and to ensure that you're involving your lats, try to think about getting your upper arm to touch the side of your body when you pull. This is a great mental cue that helps you pull from your elbows, as they like to say. And if you find yourself feeling it more in your forearms and your biceps when you're doing the lat pull down, then likely you're probably taking too narrow of a grip and pulling more with elbow flexion, meaning you're not getting your upper arm to touch the side of your body, more so you're just bending your elbows. Now when you pull, you want to aim to have the bar land around your upper chest, and naturally you're going to want to lean back slightly as you pull. That's completely fine, just don't overdo it and turn it into a row. And you want to make sure that between each rep you're slowing the ascent back upwards as you feel your lats stretch back out. This is known as the eccentric portion of the lift and should not be neglected, meaning you should be in complete control as you're bringing the bar back up. And how do you know you're in control? Well, I recommend following a 2 to 4 second tempo on the eccentric part. So literally count 2 to 4 seconds as you send your arms back up. Now for set number 1, I want your grip to be outside of shoulder width to bias your lower lats. But for set number 2, I actually recommend taking a closer grip around exactly at shoulder width to better bias your upper lats. Now, naturally, because you're taking a closer grip, you're going to be pulling with your arms more out in front of you, which is completely fine. Just try to remember to get your upper arm and tricep area to touch the side of your body, just like in set number 1. And if you're lucky enough to have this piece of equipment in your gym for set number 2, even better. In terms of reps, aim for around 6 to 10 reps for each set, and promise me that you'll try to get 2 more reps once it starts burning. This will ensure that you're actually training hard enough in the first place. And then between each set, allow yourself around 2 to 3 minutes of rest. And now we're ready to move on to exercise number 2, and that is 3 sets of dumbbell bench press for the chest, front delts, and the triceps. This exercise mainly focuses on chest, but in order to make it slightly more front delt bias, we're going to be adjusting the bench angle upward with each set. So set number 1, set the bench press 1 notch up from completely flat at around 15 degrees. And then for set number 2, set it up another notch, so now you're at 30 degrees to bias more of the upper chest. And then for the last set, set number 3, set it up 1 last notch to around 45 degrees, and now you're going to be venturing in more front delt territory. Now you might be wondering why I don't have the bench completely flat. Well, I think for most individuals, when you account for your natural arch, 15 degrees is going to feel more comfortable than being completely flat. Now when it comes to shoulder position, you want your elbows to be roughly halfway tucked between completely flared out at around 90 degrees and right against your side at around 0 degrees. Also, it's going to feel natural to slightly turn your wrists so that the dumbbells are more crossing diagonally rather than facing each other. To make sure you're biasing your chest, especially in the first 2 sets, you want to stick out your chest so that a small natural arch forms between your back and the bench. Remember to slow the descent to get a good mindful stretch on your chest, and once again aim for roughly a 2 to 4 second eccentric. I recommend sticking to around the 6 to 10 rep range for each set, and again, promise me you're going to try to get to at least 2 more reps once it starts burning. This ensures that you're actually training hard enough. And trust me, if you're training hard enough, you're going to need around a 2 to 3 minute rest between each set. I want to point out that ideally we'd split up these different bench angles into multiple workout days, but if we're talking about an all-encompassing workout, I think it makes sense to switch things up between each set. But with that said, if you're personally looking for full workout programs or even some personal guidance to help you stay accountable, then I highly recommend you apply to my exclusive one-on-one fitness coaching program, which will essentially help you get to your fitness goals. And if you've struggled with consistency in the past, then you're going to want a coach that has a more long-term and sustainable approach to fitness and nutrition. And me personally, I've always preached a more balanced approach when it comes to pursuing fitness. So if you're interested, apply in the link in the description. Let's get it. Exercise number 3 is going to be 2 sets of machine lateral raises for the side delts to help build those broad shoulders. Lateral raises are notoriously the most incorrectly performed exercise I personally have seen. The key thing to focus on is minimizing trap involvement. You do this by keeping your collarbone down, and instead of thinking about raising your arms up, focus on pushing your arms outward rather than upward. I've also heard people visualize this by pretending to slide your arm under a fence. I did not make this up. When you do the raise, I actually recommend you raise with your arms slightly in front of your body in the scapular plane, as opposed to directly out to the side in the frontal plane. Again, this is just going to help with minimizing trap involvement. And also this will force you to lean forward just a bit, which will better align the side delts with the direction of force. Like always, it is important to slow the descent back down, which is the eccentric. And once again, aim for around a 2 to 4 second tempo on that eccentric. Now, if you don't have a machine, you can easily replicate this with dumbbells, and everything I mentioned pretty much applies. Aim for around 8 to 12 reps for each set, and once again, promise me you're going to try to get at least 2 more reps once it starts burning. I set the rep range slightly higher than the last 2 exercises because as a beginner, you'll likely be prone to shrugging and bringing your traps into the mix if you go too heavy on these. A 2-minute rest will suffice. Moving on to exercise number 4, we got 2 sets of a chest supported T-bar row for the mid back and rear delts and pretty much the back muscles above the lats. Now, if you don't have a T-bar, you can replicate this with dumbbells, but for this exercise, you want to pull with a wide pronated grip. This will force you to pull with your elbows far from your body, so a lot of elbow flare, in order to better bias the traps and rhomboids. Now, make sure you're bracing your core on this exercise so you don't lose your breath when the rest is pressing against your sternum. Do this by squeezing your abs as if Rotang or Rotang was going to punch you in the stomach. No, like actually, it actually helps. Most T-bar machines I've seen will have two handles, a wider and then a narrower diagonal grip. For set number 1, I recommend taking the wider pronated grip and focus on squeezing your shoulder blades back together, which will help you bias the muscles of your mid-back, such as the traps and rhomboids. And then for set number 2, take the narrower diagonal grip, and this time pull while keeping your shoulder blades more apart. In other words, don't squeeze your shoulder blades back. The range of motion should feel shorter on this one compared to the first set, and you'll notice that you'll be able to bias your rear delts better this way. And like always, remember to slow the descent back down to get a good mindful stretch on your back and your rear delts. And once again, aim for around a 2 to 4 second eccentric on the tempo. I recommend 6 to 10 reps for each set. And once again, if you haven't been doing it, promise me that this time you're going to try to at least get 2 more reps once it starts burning. You want to be training hard. You need to focus on training hard if you want to grow. 2 to 3 minutes rest will suffice. Now, an important part of having a good workout, in my opinion, is feeling comfortable, not only in your own skin, but also with what lies on top of it. I think one of the most slept on clothing brands for comfort and minimalist aesthetics is Able. Now, I am a sponsored athlete for them, so if you use code PATH at checkout, you're going to get an extra 10% off on top of whatever sales they're going to be running. So if you're interested, check that out, link in the description. Moving on to exercise number 5 and 6, we got 1 to 2 sets of unilateral cable tricep pushdowns, supersetting that with 1 to 2 sets of dumbbell bicep curls, both taken to failure. Firstly, for the tricep pushdowns, I like to do this exercise unilaterally or with one arm at a time, because unilateral training has been shown to be potentially beneficial for recruiting more muscle fibers if the movement is more stable. Keyword, if it's more stable. But if you personally are like, I preferred using 2 arms at a time, that works too. In fact, there are many different ways to do a tricep pushdown, like with the crossbody variation that has been shown to be better for the long head of the triceps. But it's a bit more technical since you have to line up the cables with your arm. Instead, for a beginner, I recommend a traditional arm at your side tricep pushdown. Being that this is an isolation exercise for the triceps, the focus is on the elbow joint, meaning your shoulders shouldn't be moving back and forth when you're extending your elbows, or else you're just going to be involving more of your lats. And like always, don't neglect the eccentric. Focus on slowing the ascent back up and aim for that eccentric to be around 2 to 4 seconds long. And then immediately after that set, you're going to hop straight into dumbbell bicep curls. You can either bring over the dumbbells to be used later. I promise no one will be mad if it's just for 1 or 2 sets. Or you can walk over to the dumbbell rack after your set of tricep pushdowns. It's up to you. When it comes to the bicep curl variation, I'd opt with doing this exercise while staying supinated, that is palms facing up, as opposed to twisting your wrist between each rep. Just because for a beginner, it would likely be easier for you to cheat if you're twisting your wrist between each rep. I also like doing this bilaterally, so both arms at the same time, but if you're doing alternating 1 arm at a time, that works too. Now, my biggest advice when it comes to form is I recommend keeping your elbows glued to the side of your body and focus on purely bending your elbow, meaning there shouldn't be all that much movement in your shoulder, similar to with the tricep pushdowns. And of course, the 2 to 4 second tempo on the eccentric still applies here. Now, for both exercises, I'd aim for around 8 to 12 reps for each set, and like always, promise you're going to try to get 2 more reps once it starts burning. Reps are slightly higher here once more because as a beginner, you're likely to be prone to moving your shoulder around or having your form break down if you go too heavy. Now, if you're feeling pretty tired after that 1 set, maybe your upper body feel like jello, then 1 set might be all you need. But if you got that dog in you, or maybe quite the opposite if you didn't train hard enough and you feel like going for that 2nd set, I recommend taking a 2-minute rest before jumping back into tricep pushdown. Lastly comes abs. You've probably heard the saying, abs are made in the kitchen. Well, the truth of the matter is that training your abs won't likely result in you seeing them if you're at too high of a body fat percentage. Meaning if you're not already able to see your abs, then you probably won't be able to see them just by training them alone. That being said, you'll have to focus on maintaining a caloric deficit for long enough until you reach that desired body fat level where you can actually see your abs. That being said, training your abs will in fact strengthen them, and like any muscle, allow them to grow and be more prominent if you're already around that 15% body fat for men or around that 20% body fat mark for women. And if you're training your abs, it doesn't have to be all that complicated or long. As a beginner, I recommend something body weight, a simple circuit of 10 to 20 reps of the following: V-ups, Russian twists, bicycles. That could suffice, or you can look up any of the plethora of 5-minute ab workouts you'll find splattered all across YouTube.
All right, guys, so that was the beginner's upper body workout. I tried to be as all-encompassing as possible and cover a wide array of muscle groups in a somewhat reasonable amount of time, so I hope you guys enjoyed. Leave a like if you found this helpful. Subscribe if you want to see more videos just like this. Level up your physique, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.